The Ukraine is suffering right now, but Joy Reid thinks we're talking about the situation too much. And her claim was the United States was only talking this much about the Ukraine because they were a white Christian nation. And she said there are tons of issues in Africa and the Middle East being ignored, but the Ukraine gets all the coverage. This is very similar to a comment she made about the Gabby Petito case last year, where she called it missing white girl syndrome. She mentioned there were thousands of cases of missing black women, but nobody gave them the attention Petito got. And while Joy Reid might have a point on the Petito case, I don't think she understands Russia and the importance of the Ukraine. For one big difference is the US has had over 100 years of division with Russia that had led up to this. There's also a big economic component to this, where Russia supplies 1/3 of European natural gas and 8% of US gas imports. And Russia is just simply a much bigger nuclear threat with 6,257 nuclear weapons on hand. And to be clear, Joy Reid is right that there are other conflicts going around in the world that need more coverage. But Reid has a TV show as well as millions of followers on social media, so she has the power to get them coverage. So there's no reason she has to make absolutely insane comments undermining what's going on in the Ukraine. So even though she has a lot of experience in media, I think Joy Reid had a very immature take on this one.
But in the end, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state, is that if you can't flip enough white women, and we've talked about this on this set numerous times, is that you have a state where you've got a 6-week abortion or a 12-week abortion. I think theirs might be 12 weeks.
Yep.
But it's a state where women lost their reproductive rights, where there was a very heavy push to get women to focus on not putting in place, re-electing, putting back into the White House the person who was responsible for taking those rights away and restoring them. But that message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy.
I'm sorry, black people, but Joy Reid is a stone cold racist. Hey guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this channel, and please leave a comment below. It'd greatly be appreciated. Spread the word. Let's get those viewership going so that we can move into the next phase where we can start debates, live conversations. We really want to get this channel popping. So please do me that huge favor. Let's spread the word. Let's get the word out. We really need that, all the help we can get. So thank you guys for being here. Once again, this is the Marc Perspective Show. And as right now, let's cut through the noise and speak truth with clarity. Today, I'm going to dive into a topic that's been bugging me for years. But recently, it's boiled over the rhetoric of Joy Reid, who's a former MSNBC host, and now she's doing, a podcast or something where she's once again continuing her anger or so forth, particularly toward white America. So I want to dive into that. But first, let me be clear. Criticism of power structures, historical injustices, and systemic bias is not only valid, it's necessary. But when that critique morphs into blanket disdain for an entire racial group, it ceases to be journalism. It becomes prejudice masquerading as progress. Yeah. Joy Reid has made statements that many find deeply offensive. And me, being black, I find a lot of her comments very offensive. She's referred to white candidates as mayonnaise sandwich on Wonder Bread, white, and mocked white male tears as symbols of fragility. Yeah, my goodness. She's suggested that white voters only care about border security to drive all the blacks out of the colleges. That's it. Yeah, that has to be the dumbest thing I ever heard. These aren't just provocative, they're corrosive.
Trump has those kind of voters. They are dedicated to him personally.
They care more about him being happy than them being happy. They care more about him having what he wants than them having what they want. They will give up their health care. They will let their daughters be destroyed. They will let their families be destroyed. There's nothing he can do. He can drown them in Texas. He can take away their FEMA. He can do anything he wants to them. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a cult.
Wanted to play that video of Joy Reid, and just so you guys can see who she is, and just to hear some of the things she say, her fixation on Trump and so forth. But the reason why I played that, I wanted you guys to see, is because on July 17th of this year, Joy Reid appeared on the Piers Morgan Uncensored, and she was expecting a civil discussion about her new YouTube show and talk about current politics. And remember, I mentioned in I believe it was the first show when I posted my first episode was about, and I mentioned Piers Morgan show, and this show is something else. It could have been the first episode, second or third, I'm not sure, but I mentioned about the Piers Morgan show. It is unfiltered for sure. I can't even make it up. But yeah, she was expecting a talk about her show and current politics, but what she got instead was a verbal reckoning. So Piers Morgan confronted Reid with her past blog posts, her controversial remarks about race, and her tendency to label critics as racist. He asked why she called Trump a fascist for deportation, but gave Obama a pass, which Obama deported about 3 million. Reid deflected, accused Morgan of racializing conversations, and called him a thirsty little troll, obsessed with race and desperate from his very white audience. Joy Reid is a lady that has some serious issues. And for some reason, she could never have a conversation about maybe, the current. I don't hear Joy Reid talking about blacks not being able to read or do math at grade level, about illiteracy, poverty, prison population, homicide. I don't hear her talking about none of this. How young kids are less in the workforce. She don't talk about black men being the poorest in America. I don't hear her talking about none of that. All she talks about is white this and white that. And the funny part is that the blacks, that's when you look at the metrics for black Americans, it's not the whites that's doing it to them. It's blacks itself. And these black leaders and influencers like Joy Reid are helping to keep young black kids down and turn them basically violent. Like they become violent. And that's the fault of Joy Reid, and I really wish that people could stand up, especially black people could stand up to Joy Reid and truly express how they feel and her negative, divisive comments.
Not the pick that I expected that she would make. It did come down to the final 3, as we understand it, and I thought she would go astronaut. Keeping it real, he to me would have been the safest, most conventionally safe pick. White, super white, like mayonnaise sandwich on Wonder Bread, white. From a border state, he could have made a strong argument for her.
I mean, look, let's be honest. I don't think you were fired after all those years because of your skin colour or because you're a black woman. I think you were fired because your show just got increasingly unpopular. It happens all the time in TV. That's why you got let go. Why play the race card?
First of all, I love the fact that your play the race card is your version of the race card. You literally are so fixated on trying to racialize conversations with me, Piers, I find it actually quite charming.
You racialize more conversations in your tenure at MSNBC than any host in history.
All right, Mark. All right, Piers. And the bottom line is you take an entire conversation that I had with Marc Lamont Hill and pick the bits that you can racialize because this is your shtick. And I get that this is your shtick.
You racialize everything, Joy. Come on.
I get it. I understand this is your shtick, Piers. And listen, game recognizes game. I get this is
it's
your
not
game.
my shtick.
And the bottom line,
it was your
it
shtick.
It is your shtick, and everyone knows that it is.
It was your shtick.
Piers, we
And people got
understand
bored
what
with
it is.
it.
And it is so interesting to me that you yourself, as a white European, find that when people of color talk about race, that you believe is racializing conversations. But when people like you fixate on, well, Barack Obama was a black president, why don't you object to that? That is racializing a conversation about the former president of the United States. But you can't put your, and I'm sure you find that charming and funny.
I find it
You
hilarious
cannot
because
see
you're the
your
one.
own-
You're
Well,
the one
you
who
and
said
your
you're
friend
the one who
Trump,
said Donald
you
Trump's.
and your friend Donald
You
Trump.
said Donald
you and
Trump
your
is a
friend
white
Donald Trump
fascist.
Are so he is a well. I agree
And
with
yet
Mark
when Obama
Milley,
did the
who
same
is,
thing,
last time I checked, is
I'm not allowed
black.
to mention his
I
skin
agree.
color.
And that's not all. She went after this lady. I guess it's like this mother who's fighting for children, for parents to have the rights over their kids, because like liberal states were saying that parents needed to stay out and allow schools to make decisions, like if kids need to go through sexual changes or something like that. It was a really big issue. And I guess Joy Reid brought one on her show and challenged her because a man wrote a book. And in this book, you can clearly tell that this man is gay. And when he wrote this book as a kid, it sounded more pedophilia than him speaking of his trauma, because he expressed certain things and it sounded like it was things that he enjoyed, like strap-on dildos and things like that. It sounded like things that he enjoyed. And he was expressing himself, but to put this out for children, I mean, I'm not talking about high school kids, I'm talking about children to read, was very troublesome, very troubling, excuse me. But for some reason, Joy Reid went on to Piers Morgan's show and he challenged her on that. Check this out.
I want to play a clip. This is you talking about, you attacking parents. You spoke out about their concerns about gay and paedophilia pornography books being placed in school libraries.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so
Sure.
I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? I mean, that's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No,
Wait,
we're
hold
talking
on.
about public school.
One moment.
All right.
Now, there's also a second clip. This is you talking about Republicans exploiting concerns by minors who identify as transgender. And you said this was an old age tradition which Nazi Germany did. Let's take a look.
In fact, there are more kids who have been exposed to gun violence, estimated at 3 million, than there are transgender Americans of all ages in total. Targeting trans people isn't new. It is an age-old tradition, which Nazi Germany did with brutally violent ends in the 1930s.
Now, the confusing part of all this, Joy, is what you really think about the LGBTQ plus, whatever it now is, community. Right, because as you know, when you started commentating about this, appearing to be a big ally, a lot of stuff emerged which came from posts that you had purportedly put up in a blog between 2007 and 2009, one of which said, most straight people cringe at the sight of two men kissing. Another said, I don't want to watch the two male characters in Brokeback Mountain. You were talking about having sex. Does that make me homophobic? Probably. You referred to the then Florida governor as Miss Charlie and featured the tag gay politicians. Now, you said at the time when all this emerged, I genuinely don't believe I wrote those hateful things because they're completely alien to me. I hired cybersecurity experts to see if somebody manipulated my words or my former blog. And the reality is they've not been able to prove it. Now you're not at MSNBC. Now you're on your own, doing your own thing, and you don't have to worry about repercussions and stuff. Are you prepared to finally come clean and just admit that was your blog and you did say those things? of interest.
Books that are
Okay, but
known
just to be clear,
classics.
just to be
No,
clear,
books that are
okay,
known
just to be
classics.
clear.
And so I asked her, I think, what is a legitimate question.
Books, all right, do you think school children at school should have access to books in their library which involve strap-on dildos?
Again, you're taking a book that has multiple subjects and you're taking this award-winning book and dumbing it down to
I just asked you a simple
because
question.
you may feel uncomfortable. And the bottom line is, these books that were published by publishers who had an opportunity to say no, looked at these books. These are award-winning books. And I think parents should have the opportunity to opt their children out if they don't feel comfortable reading those books, but that children who are old enough and who are of age and can choose the books they want to read and may feel seen in a book that you might object to ought to have the opportunity to read that book. That shouldn't be your decision. It shouldn't be Moms for Liberty's decision. I think each parent can make the decision for their own children. And I don't think that woman from Moms for Liberty or her organization should make that decision for other people's children. People ought to make decisions for their own children. And by the way, one more thing I'll add is that in the state of Florida, parents can opt their children out of reading books that they don't want to read.
All right, let me ask you.
She could have done that like any other parent.
Have you watched Brokeback Mountain?
No.
Okay. I mean,
and what is the point of that?
Well, because you said I don't want to watch the two male characters in Brokeback Mountain having sex.
Okay, so what does me watching Brokeback Mountain have to do with that book, whether or not it is pornographic?
No, nothing to do with the book.
That book, that is a book that people can have the opportunity to read if they so choose.
No, I'm not talking about the book.
I do not understand how an organization can make a decision. It is not about the movie. It is about whether or not Moms for Liberty.
I'm not talking about the book.
The organization who should make decisions for other people's children.
I'm not talking about the book,
Whether
as you know.
I watched a movie or not makes absolutely no difference.
I'm talking about you posting on your blog that you wouldn't watch Brokeback Mountain because you don't want to see two male characters having sex. Does that make me homophobic? Probably. Most straight people cringe at the sight of two men kissing. Your words, not mine, Joy.
And your point is?
That maybe that makes you a bit of a hypocrite when you're taking the position of being an ally for the LGBTQ community. And actually, the best way to handle it, I would argue, is just to say, you know what? Actually, I did write that at the time. They're not my views now. I've learned, I've evolved, I've moved on. Trying to pretend even now that you didn't write it is preposterous. And I think you know that.
The bottom line is what I've said, and I will say it again, is that I take full responsibility for everything that was on that site. I'm deeply apologetic for the things that were on that site that hurt people, and I take responsibility for it because it was my site. And that's the end of that. And my views, as you know, and as I've said on television, on air, are quite different from the views that you just read. And that's the end of that.
You think that was bad? Here's a lady who claims to be fighting for the less fortunate, the weak, so much. And she's always claiming to be fighting for the LGBTQ community. However, at one time, she wrote some offensive homophobic slurs about the former governor of Florida, Charlie Crist. Very offensive. It was some of the most derogatory comments written about an individual. It was very homophobic. It was sad. And then she denied it, but then some new homophobic slurs came out, and then she claimed that she did write like stuff about Charlie Crist, but it wasn't to offend gays. But the other offensive stuff, which she says she has no idea that, she did this. And then she tried to blame it on Russia. She claimed that the Russians hacked her, like the Russians. First of all, they claimed that the Russians went after President Trump, just so he could win the election. That comes to that, then we find out that that's not even true. There was a whole made up story, so I don't know why some people aren't being arrested, for that. But then she turns around now as if the Russians really care about her to say that she was hacked by the Russians, or she was hacked. She might not have said the Russians, but she claimed that she was hacked. And then she had to come out and say that she couldn't prove that she was hacked. But deep down in her heart, she knows she didn't write those. But yeah, you did. Yes, you did. And this shows the hypocrisy of these individuals who come on TV and pretend to have this fighting spirit and fighting soul, and they can never be truthful. And they say some of the most hurtful things, and yet they play victim. And it's really, well, I'm not even shocked that she would even resort to that.
Joy Reid, the MSNBC host, apologized back in December after the discovery of some homophobic web posts that she had written a decade ago. But when Mediaite recently unearthed more posts from that era mocking gay people and homosexuality, really ugly stuff, Reid came up with a rather far-fetched explanation that she'd been hacked, which had to have occurred back when she was little known. And yesterday, Reid admitted that she can't prove any hacking.
I genuinely do not believe I wrote those hateful things because they are completely alien to me. But I can definitely understand, based on things I have tweeted and have written in the past, why some people don't believe me. I've not been exempt from being dumb or cruel or hurtful to the very people I want to advocate for. I own that. I get it. And for that, I am truly, truly sorry.
I think it's pretty obvious now that Reid lied and received strikingly little coverage, but I certainly give her credit for the apology.
So, in the end, this conversation isn't just about Joy Reid. It's about the culture we're shaping one headline at a time. When public figures normalize mockery based on race, they don't just offend, they fracture the very foundation of dialogue. And when we let it slide because it's aimed at a group we're told it's okay to ridicule, we lose something vital, like, our moral compass. Critique is essential. Accountability is non-negotiable, but contempt, especially racial contempt, should never be the currency of commentary. If we want to build coalitions, not echo chambers, if we want to speak truth without sacrificing grace, then we have to reject the voices that thrive on division, no matter how popular or politically aligned they may be. Because dignity isn't partisan, respect isn't conditional, and truth, real truth, requires courage, not cruelty. So let's raise the bar. Let's challenge the noise. Let's demand better from our media, from our leaders, and from ourselves. I'm so happy I did this episode here, because we really need to speak out on this divisive commentary that we continue hearing day after day after day, and if we don't stand up, both black, white, Asian, I don't care who, but if we do not stand up and speak truth, then we will be just as guilty as the ones who spew in the hatred, who spew in the divisive comments. We will be just as guilty. And if we want to be better, not saying that racism will just disappear, but if we want to see better from everybody, fairness, fair competition, hard work, determination, then we need to all get together and challenge those who feel that, by destroying one race, by degrading a certain race, by ridiculing all races except one, to me, I call them a racist. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share to this channel. Leave a comment below. I'm always willing to answer your comments, or if you need something personal or anything, until we reach the viewership that I need, then you can reach me at the Marc Perspective at gmail.com. So happy I could have done this episode. I hope that more people can listen, understand, and take that message forward, because the more of us, it means that we're stronger together, and we can really send a message out there that, attitude, divisive behavior never works. Unity, fairness will always succeed. Once again, this is the Marc Perspective Show. Thank you for listening. Peace.